Next is citizens requesting placement on the agenda. And I have a list. We'll go right down the list, beginning with Andrew Weaver.
Wow, so much good material to work with tonight. So I'm going to start with, again, find that we all have certain things we agree on. Barb, I 100% agree with you. There are policies and procedures already in place to prevent some of the things that Joe brought up. I appreciate Joe, for the first time, having some confidence to speak to the truth, to what parents are seeing. But again, Barb, I agree with you. These policies and procedures do exist. We've just not held anyone accountable to adhere them. So, yes, 100%, we should not be creating policies and procedures that already exist for public consumption. We should just hold people accountable, which is why you should be terminating anyone that was involved in the actions that led to the lawsuit. That's also why each of you should be resigning, because that was your obligation and you gave it up. So, again, that is the stuff that the community has been talking about. And you just flat out said, they all exist. And you've chosen not to enforce them. And we're seeing it time and time again. So now when we move into the curriculum, we just found out that a retired RCS teacher was advocating buying books on Amazon that parents are questioning and giving them to teachers to use in their personal classroom so that they don't have to go through those processes to be approved. Where is the policy in that? Why is there not a standard being upheld? I had the principal of my kid's school tell me teachers can use whatever material they want in their personal classroom libraries. Adding the word personal to it does not make it their authority. There is standards in place. That is all anyone has asked for from the beginning of this. And everyone at this table has not taken their responsibility serious, and they have not met the standard. So yes, tonight, do what you're supposed to do, hold people accountable for those policies that, Barb, you just told us exist, that you know have been violated, and terminate contracts, and then resign. You have lost trust with the community. The smoke and mirrors is not going to work. We have sat here and listened till you guys tell us we won some fancy award for presentations on finance, but we cannot see a budget for the admin building, the new admin building. It cannot, can one of the 6 degreed accountants not produce that? Where is the expectations? Where are the standards? This is the stuff that the community is not glossing over anymore. The smoke and mirrors are done. So again, terminate the contracts of all those involved, resign, every single one of you. There's no way to move forward with leadership that is currently in place before we lose more good teachers. There's names on that retirement list and the people that left that people in this community know belong in the district. And you know why they're leaving. So if you want people that can do the right thing, it is time to stand up and hold people accountable, Barb, to those policies that you told us exist. Hold them accountable. And Scott, can you please tell us what the special event was for today? We would love to know what brought you home today.
Thank you.
I'm Bob Yeager. I think I was asked to identify where I come from and what my relationship to the school is. I live at 1146 Bear Creek Court in Oakland Township. It's about a half-mile north of the Pink Creek Cider Mill. Been there for 20 years. Used to live down here for 10 years and in Sylvania, Ohio for 20 years. About 9 years ago, I started Oakland Township Sentinel. It's an online newsletter because I felt that in our township, people didn't get in-depth stories about what's going on. They got whatever the Post could afford to do and what the Romeo Record could afford to do, but it wasn't enough. So in the process of doing that, a few years ago, we had an argument, our township did, with Lake Orion Schools about funding of a police liaison officer for Oakview Middle School. It's in our township, but it's a Lake Orion school. And they wanted to do 50-50. We wanted to do in proportion to student population. So I looked up, well, what do we do with Rochester Hills? And we do it according to student population. And I got this agreement, and I was looking at it. At that time, I was just worried about funding, but I noticed that it talked about how the school police program works. It's, for those of you who don't know, there's 5 officers, 3 from the Sheriff Department, 2 from the Rochester City Police Department, and they service the numerous schools you have in this enormous school district. I haven't been to a board meeting since 1964 when I graduated from high school, and this is quite different in terms of complexity of issues and size and things to deal with, and the audience participation is quite different too. So what I would ask you to do is, I sent you a letter about this back in February. In fact, I hand-delivered it to most of you and sent one return receipt requested to the board president because I wasn't sure how things work. And my wife and I wrote the letter. And basically, just to emphasize parts of it, we have this agreement, and it has 2 basic things. It has there's a group called what do they call it? The management team, which is the Oakland County Sheriff's Department, the Rochester Police Department, and somebody appointed by the superintendent. And they do a number of things, one of which is provide an annual report by June 17th for distribution to the Executive Committee, Steering Committee, and government agencies who are parties to this agreement to tell them what's going on. Well, my wife and I did some FOIA requests. I've done probably 100 or so over the past 9 years through various agencies. And between the school system and Oakland Township and the city of Rochester, we came up with nothing that said that this report has ever been issued since 2010 is the date of the agreement, the amended agreement. So then it talks about this executive committee. That is the superintendent and the leaders of our 4 communities, the township manager of Oakland Township, the city manager of Rochester, and the mayor of Rochester Hills. And that executive committee has a number of responsibilities in this agreement. 3 main ones being maintaining the program's philosophy of crime prevention through education and appropriate law enforcement, oversight and administration of the police school liaison program, and the main one I thought was establishment and implementation of the goals and objectives for the program based on the recommendations of the steering committee. So again, we did FOIA requests, my wife and I. We came up with nothing that says goals and objectives have ever been set by this executive committee.
And that's time.
Okay,
Sorry.
thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Tara Donnelly, and I'm a parent in Rochester Hills. I'm also an RCS alum, so go Highlanders, class of 91. So, proud RCS alum. I'm here because being an alum, I especially really hate this community divide. I really do. I mean, I can't stand the conflict. I have friends on both sides of the aisle, and I'm really, truly, I'm heartbroken about what's been going on in the last 2 years, and I want to find a path forward to healing. I really do. But, I'd like to offer my perspective as the admin in 3 different Facebook groups over the past 2 years, and as an admin, I've read thousands of comments, so I too monitor the pulse of the community, although I don't, but I don't take screenshots and send them to employers. I have received hundreds of messages from members who are too scared to make public comments on issues because they feared retaliation from RCS. So this includes parents who fear speaking up on issues like, mold in a building, water leaks, late buses, as well as staff who fear deteriorating work conditions if they voice their unhappiness about low hourly wages or the recent teacher contracts with the 1% raise. So, after reading the 4 depositions from the recent lawsuit, I do understand their concerns, and I encourage anyone in this room to read the 4 depositions for yourself. Do not rely on articles. Read it and form your own opinions. Apply critical thinking that we just talked about. Okay. So I don't understand why RCS used taxpayer funds to hire a PR employee who spends 60 to 70% of her time on social media without any parameters. I do not understand why the RCS Community Relations Director applauded employees for compiling a 165-page dossier of screenshots of nonviolent comments in a Facebook group over a couple of days. That's not in entirety. That's a couple of days according to the deposition. This is 165 pages in 2 days. Is this really a good use of our taxpayer funds? I mean, you can hear the thud. So, I mean, is this the best use of our taxpayer funds when we have teachers getting 1% raises and paraeducators getting $13 an hour? I mean, so I don't understand why the RCS Community Relations Director passes out screenshots to the other RCS administrators and board members instead of acting like a
30
PR
seconds.
professional in other industries and answering questions directly. So I don't understand how the assistant superintendent expressed concern about children in distress by getting a parent fired of the child in distress. You are the sole cause of any distress, okay? So how do we heal? Silence is complicity. You need to stand up and hold the people responsible accountable, because nobody should fear retaliation by speaking up on behalf of their children or on behalf of their work conditions. Enough is enough.
Thank you. Next on the
Imagine that. Audio, so that you can hear me. Unlike last time when I was up here, I kind of had to project my voice a little bit. So, now I'm hoping you guys are going to listen. So earlier today, I found a quote that perfectly summarizes the last 3 weeks. Being honest may not get you a lot of friends, but it'll always get you the right ones. Based upon the depositions in the Denverno lawsuit against this district, the deputy superintendent admitted to contacting the daughter of a retiree. This woman is a teacher at Delta Kelly who had yet to attain her 10 years of service. Upon getting the phone number, the deputy superintendent called the RCS retiree. Now, normally this wouldn't be suspect, but it led to some horrible outcomes. So many little crumbs fell on the ground. The retiree was someone who worked for RCS, worked with you for 30 years. You spoke to the retiree's husband, too, and stated, this whole thing will reflect poorly on Andrea and therefore the district. The conversation wasn't recorded, but whatever you said caused a mother to be let go from her employment for no good reason at all. All she was doing was advocating for her children and everyone else's children. Is this how you treated the teachers at Hugger when you were principal? And I hope that weighs heavily on your mind each and every time you look at yourself in the mirror. And then I think to myself, who are these people who would continue to employ people who got a mother fired? And here's the only answer I can think of. You are weak, and you are following a morally corrupt structure headed by someone with no spine. You cannot recognize that you support a system that is sick and rotting from the top. Then you are part of the problem, if not the entire problem. You do not deserve to sit in those seats. Every one of you are culpable for allowing the superintendent and his staff to create a toxic work
30
environment
seconds.
where teachers are fearful of retaliation to their career. Even Matt McDonald said it best when he said, "The BOE sets the tone at the top. I demand that you terminate Shaner for cause. I demand that you fire Fragamenti, Grind, and DeCreasy. And I demand that every one of you on the current BOE resign. The state can then step in and assist us
10
to
seconds.
heal our community with new elections." Have a nice day.
Hi. I hope this doesn't sound too chappy. I'm going to try to combine my comments with my husband's comments. He had to leave to pick up our children. So I'm going to try to do this both. In 2019, I interviewed for a vacant Board of Education seat. I sat before you then, and I talked about my dedication to increasing transparency and lifting the shroud of secrecy that surrounds this district. Instead of engaging with me at the time, you spent a significant amount of time on tape during my interview, telling me how personally offended you were that I would suggest that this district has transparency issues. Now, here we are in 2022. RCS has been embroiled in multiple lawsuits. They've committed OMA and ACLU violations. They've cost us so much, both financially and in terms of our reputation as a district. They have broken our community, all as a result of secretive, shady decisions made by unchecked leaders who are more concerned about preserving their egos than serving our children. And my husband wanted me to say that many of us here tonight moved to Rochester to be a part of and continue a legacy of excellence. Believe it or not, he said, this legacy was not built by the current school board or administration. It was gifted over decades of responsive leadership, excellence in teaching, and community support. He considers you all stewards of that excellence, and instead of enhancing and building on that legacy, you have diminished it through control, distrust, and mismanagement. It is the responsibility of the school board to be critical of and challenge the administration in their mission to do their best for our children and the community at large. Good leadership welcomes dissent, and growth comes from discussion, and that is not happening here, and it hasn't been happening for many years. Tonight, we are saying no more, no more. Tonight, so many of us here speak in one voice as we say unequivocally that it is time for a change in leadership. It is the only way for us to move forward. Thank you.
All right. Hi, everyone. Good evening. My name's Melissa Winkler. I have 4 children in Rochester. I'm also an attorney. My background's in Homeland Security, but currently I'm teaching college classes. I've also, like many people, been a longtime resident of Rochester. Go Highlanders again. I grew up in Rochester. I benefited from the various advanced courses offered in Rochester through Rochester Community Schools. The advanced courses and vast opportunities for success and the stellar reputation of Rochester Community Schools are some of the reasons I was insistent on moving back to Rochester. I mean, it became like a joke with me and my husband. I was like, we will live in Rochester. And then, of course, this happened. So anyways, he's laughing at me now. But anyways, I've been extraordinarily happy with my kids' teachers. I have 2 children, a first grader and second grader. And my biggest challenges have been taking place at the top level. So the 3 main issues I'd like to speak on, and I'm talking fast because a lot of content that I want to cover, is the misuse of funds, the lack of transparency, and issues with the administration and Board of Education, and the removal of advanced courses. So while the issues in themselves aren't related, the foundational solution is the same. It's the removal of the Board of Education members and the top members of the administration. So budgetary concerns, there seems to be a trend of poor decisions. My main focus is currently on the administration building. Funds should be allocated first toward the schools before massive spending takes place at a building that's larger than necessary on the outskirts of our community. The board should question the spending decisions rather than being a yes rubber stamp, and community members should have input on whether these are the most logical and best use of taxpayer funds. On the note of advanced courses, in order to succeed, we need to focus on each student's individual strengths. During my time at RCS, I took advanced English, was part of Atlas, which was a program focused on international studies, and those have since been removed. These courses allowed me to focus my training on areas that were catalysts to me studying international law and homeland security. We need to focus on areas that students can excel in, and we don't need to have a one-size-fits-all approach. Finally, I would like to speak on the respect code. It's extremely disheartening, not only as an attorney that supports First Amendment rights, but also as a community member to see what Debbie Fragmenti has done in this community. The respect code states in the values section that all individuals are entitled to be valued. Various customs, this is from the RCS website, various customs, lifestyles, backgrounds contribute to an enriched learning environment. It would appear to me that the respect code has been violated in the situation that we just spoke of. I am shocked that there have been no public apologies and no resignations at this point. As I mentioned, I grew up in this area. Debbie Fragmeni, you were
30
actually my
seconds.
second grade teacher. And so I respected my teachers in this community so much that I wanted to live here again. And all of the respect that I once had for you, I'm sorry to say, is gone. I am shocked that a former educator of mine lied to the community and settled a federal
10
lawsuit.
seconds.
And settled a federal lawsuit for getting a parent fired from her job. I teach my kids to do the right thing, and I implore you to do the right thing and resign. And I guess last little comment, with all due respect, I'd agree with what some of the other parents have said. We don't need an additional anti-retaliation policy, although I do think it was really well written. Good job. But if we just followed the First Amendment, we'd be good. So that's my thoughts.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Good evening. Patricia Kane, taxpayer and resident, alumni of Rochester High School class of '69, and lived in the city for 65 and a half years, and proud of it until this point. I come before you tonight to tell you my experience with Rochester School Administration and the board. But I want to say something first. Our school's sterling reputation, our excellence in education, our awards, our accolades, and our recognition across this state are teacher-driven. They are student-driven. They are parent-driven. And they are taxpayer-driven because we work to fund this school. Okay? So I am very upset and irritated because the administration and this board saw fit to call people liars, to have no memory, to not recall anything, to not know who they hired does what, to say I pay them an hourly rate, but I don't know what the hourly rate is for the attorneys for cease and desist. They lost integrity, ethics, morality, and professionalism, communication, transparency to us. When I pay a man salary, I don't care if it's 10 cents to the dollar, $21,000 a month, and this is what I get? Lawsuits that are still ongoing, a letter from the UCLA that he got in 2020 that gave plenty of warning, a lawsuit just settled, and I don't think we've settled the civil one. Now, my experience with this, I have every right to file a complaint with the UCLA and ask for investigation from this. And you're at risk right now for a lot of lawsuits. And I'll tell you why. I spoke in June, last June. I asked questions about salaries. I asked about the building. 2 days later, I got a call from the Rochester School Administration. I was vetted. I happened to be off from the medical practice I work with. You know what I was asked? Who do you represent? What's your agenda? What's your motive? And you don't have any kids in the school, so why do you even care? It's none of your business. I stopped her. And I said, are you telling me as a taxpayer I can't ask a question? No. I said, well, you just said that. Meanwhile, the entire time in the background is a garbled man's voice giving instructions. I stopped her. I said, am I on speakerphone? Click. No. I said, tell me, who's there? I named 2 names. No, just somebody. I said, well, they're giving you instructions because you keep stopping, going like this, and then coming back. She knew I didn't have any children in the school system. I said, wow, you really
30
investigated
seconds.
me already, didn't you? I got no answers, so she said, well, you can get a letter. We're going to have a letter, cease and desist if you don't stop misinformation. Went on and on, talking above me. She calls me on my day off from health care, and I'm going to tell you, I'm not happy when it's my day off from health care. I want that time for me. You ready for this? She kept talking over me. I said, please tell me, where was the misinformation?
10
I asked
seconds.
questions. I never got an answer. I got a threat. So this threatening, this bullying, this intimidation, this silencing has come all around here for much more than just parents. It's shutting this entire community down if we dare ask you a question. So you know what?
And that's
Pull up
time.
your pants and start acting like you should, because my solution, You, the board, hired those 4 people. You fire them now. You're wasting my money and this community's time. And then when you're done with firing them, because that's your right, before we call the state and ask for help, leave. Your silence of these members that said nothing.
We're well past time.
Okay, well, you
Thank
got
you.
what I got the drift.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Kristen Kennedy, and I'm a resident of the Rochester Community School District community. Thank you for giving me this privilege to speak tonight, as I will now offer my thoughts about the state of our public school system, its leaders, and the actions necessary to rescue this community from the disaster we find ourselves in. Look at this crowd here tonight. It's unfortunate that a turnout like this occurs when there's a difficulty within the community, but this group signifies something. Something is terribly wrong. Standing up here, I feel an overwhelming sense of sadness. I'm sad because the school district that we all once took pride in is slowly deteriorating into a 6 o'clock news story filled with bullying and cover-ups. I'm sad because the actions of those sitting in front of us, a family lost its livelihood during an already horrible time. I'm sad because the very people this community elected to represent and protect our interests have failed to even acknowledge that there are issues and still continue to ignore the parents pleading for your help. I'm sad that the principles this district prides itself in are the ethics that this administration and board have violated. But with this sadness comes confusion. How did people who I perceived as good do something so wrong? How did the people that say they care and want to protect children stand by and watch a family lose its income as a result of those actions, calling her a crazy parent, sending her a cease and desist letter, all while knowing she was telling the truth? If you care about children, why is it taking you so long to address the leaky roof and growing mold at Long Meadow Elementary? Your conduct has jeopardized children's roofs over their heads and food on their table. The most troubling part of this whole tragedy is the seemingly unlawful and unethical behavior this superintendent and deputy have normalized. Yet the board refuses to do anything about it. Are you complicit in this kind of unethical behavior? Do you have any concern that your actions are being seen by young RCS students who may be tempted to follow in your footsteps? Why haven't you terminated the superintendent and deputy? A part of me believes that you, like many in the community, are scared to speak up and do the right thing. There is a systemic problem in leadership at the very top of this district, and it has infiltrated the entire RCS organization. For years, there have been whispers about the leadership style and poor character of the RCS superintendent. But those whispers have become louder, and now they have turned into calls for help. Without question, this superintendent is a bully, a secretive and cynical wielder of backroom leverage that is masked in deep dysfunction. I know for many this is hard to believe,
30 seconds.
but it is possible to be a villain and hero at the same time, because absolute power can corrupt even the best natures. One part champion and one part false idol. Some examples are Kwame Kilpatrick, Andrew Cuomo, Bill Cosby, O.J. Simpson, Lance Armstrong. Powerful men holding inherently powerful positions who prided some good, but were unethical, corrupt, and broke the law. They functioned without question while marginalizing or removing their critics along the way. This ship is sinking, and you were all at the helm. The time is right to do what is right. Let's restore pride in RCS excellence. And by the way, where's Dr. Shaner tonight?
Good evening. I am Lori Baggett, B-A-G-G-O-T. I have copies of all my Facebook comments for you tonight. Save a little money. I'd like to start with, I talked to somebody at the Civil Rights Division today, from the state of Michigan and Dana Nessel's office. I am formally providing you notice of the intent to petition Governor Whitmer for the removal of this board, which she has the power to do. You have 7 days to respond to it, so Monday, the 28th, it will arrive at her office. I'd like to remind you of since we were talking about the law, of the bylaw specifically, 0134, duties and responsibilities of the board members. Board members are elected to serve the interests of the school district and the entire school community. These interests may not be subordinated to any partisan principle, group, or interest. Not firing employee Deb Fragamino and ultimately her supervisor employee Robert Shaner is a breach of your duty and responsibility as board members. You are putting the interests and friendships or whatever it is of these individuals above the interests of the school district and the entire school community, and it puts you in breach of the duty and responsibility as a board member. When it was discovered that lists were kept of parents and their kids' names and schools and their comments and their grievances against this board, you looked at these lists, and some used the information against parents in this school district. You were in breach of your duty and responsibility to this school district and the entire school community. When you paid an attorney to send out cease and desist letters to parents in this community in order to get them to shut up about actions you were taking, and ultimately it led to a federal lawsuit against members of the board and employees of Rochester Community Schools, and these employees and people are still sitting here, you are in breach of your duty and responsibility to this school district and the school community. When you were sued individually and collectively in federal court for violating the First Amendment free speech rights, you are in breach of your duty and responsibility to this school district and the entire school community. When the Supreme Court of the United States allowed for nominal damages in the case of a free speech violation in 2021, it did so because the damage had been done to a constitutional right. And unlike the plaintiff in the federal lawsuit against you, the public's damages cannot be measured in dollars. That does not mean the damage has not been done in this community. We have been suppressed our free speech rights. Dr. Shaner has bullied us, and you've created an atmosphere and a chilling effect to our First Amendment rights. I'll give you one example real quick. I didn't want to wear this sweatshirt because I didn't want you to know that my kid plays lacrosse.
Good evening. I'm a taxpayer and an RCS parent. I grew up in a household that was extremely involved in our community. I understand the role of members of the Board of Education. You are elected by this community to represent this community. I also understand the role a superintendent is to lead our district. You all fail to remember that you work for us, the taxpayers. And the fact of the matter is you have all failed us. The rhetoric from Rochester Community Schools is that you listen and are responsive to the community. Yet, you do not engage in conversations or dialogue with the parents, the taxpayers, nor anyone who may have differing opinions from your agenda. However, it is time for you to respond to our community. As witness to the numerous letters to the board regarding actions to be taken with Dr. Shaner, Ms. Fragamini, and Lori Green, they all need to be fired immediately. I cannot fathom how they can sleep at night knowing that they purposely set out to destroy a woman's career. And who knows how many other victims there are out there that were scared into silence for fear of retaliation. To me, it's unconscionable. They each have had plenty of time to humble themselves and resign. Yet, here you are, smug, without an ounce of decency to do the right thing for our community. We have much to repair in our community, trust being the first priority. And the members of the board also had a hand in destroying the trust of this community. You were all complicit in covering Ms. Fragamini's actions. If any of you has a sense of integrity, you would step down now. You have brought shame, embarrassment, and now a significant financial burden that you place on the taxpayers to remedy. In addition, there is no saying what will happen to our property values given the embarrassment you have brought to our district. Families are leaving the district rather than seeking it. I implore you all to do what is best for the community. You have created a divisive situation. Please resign so that our community can begin healing by rebuilding trust and focusing upon our children and educating them, which should have been our priority all along. We will continue to fight for what is right for our community, and we will absolutely fight for our students. Once our board has a clean slate from the lies, lack of transparency, abuse of power, and deceit, we can start a fresh, solid foundation. Until that time, our community has no reason to trust in this administration and this board. None of you are above reproach.
Good evening. I am Phil Andrews, and people call me Dr. Phil, but I'll save that story for another day. For the benefit of those not on the board without access to my dossier, I should mention that my family lives in Rochester Hills. My wife Jody and I are the humble parents of 2 daughters, a senior and junior, both at Rochester High. Jody and I wanted to move our children to a Notre Dame prep, but we also wanted to prioritize our daughter's voice in this process, and they elected to stay at RCS due to sports and friends. If they were still in middle school, they'd be attending Holy Family. I've literally traveled across the world to fight human trafficking and have worked locally to shift the culture regarding the coercion, sale, and abuse of children in the sex and slave trade. And yet right here at RCS, we have adults, elected officials, authorizing the use of public tax dollars to purchase child pornography for our children to consume at school. Yes. Men don't protect women because they are weak. We protect women and children because they are valuable. The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men and women to do nothing. Guess what? Here we are, doing something. What kind of future are we preparing our children for based on the hidden agendas, lies, manipulations, and mandates demonstrated by this administration? To be adults that self-fear and abuse power bestowed on them to lead our communities? What's next? Classes on the benefits of marijuana, strategies for online gambling, or maybe the ultimate endgame, addiction to all drugs promoted by Big Pharma? Will you rename the stadium to Pfizer Field and the library to the Moderna Media Center? Whatever it takes to silence the voices of the masses and distract attention from the authoritarian bullies, right? Your compliance test is an exam our family plans to fail. Our revolution will proceed. I told my daughters 2 years ago that we don't live in caves anymore, but we are still surrounded by dinosaurs. Risk is a fact of life. We will not lock down our children. We will expose them to the world, continue to provide guidance, teach them to grow, and to live a life of integrity and service worthy of celebration. We now know that servant leadership is not the strength of this board. You may want to consider using your remaining instinct for self-preservation and step down now, before the rest of your crimes against our community are uncovered. Hashtag game over. Hashtag board of bullies. Hashtag time to go. We can handle many things, but locking our kids out of school and forcing them to wear masks like slaves when you finally allow them to return is inexcusable. This is our house. You need to leave. You work for us, and now you're fired. Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to voice my perspective. Thank you also to all the district employees who feel unable to raise their voices due to the fear of retaliation in this hostile environment, not to mention the parents. Also, when will our seniors get to go off campus again for lunch? It seems like all the heightened security has done more to imprison our children and lock out parents. All you parents, I love you all for being here in support of this evening. Have a grateful day, and may God have mercy on us all.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Carol Beth Litcooey, and I have 2 kids at RCS. Recent events make clear that we need real solutions to our problems at RCS. Administrators bullied and harassed parents in our community, even going as far as contacting parents' employers and resulting in one parent getting fired. I've heard from teachers who feel marginalized and are afraid to voice their opinions. When people in positions of power engage in deceitful or retaliatory behavior, they should step down or be removed, just as you'd see in any other business or organization. You've received depositions from the fired parents' lawsuit. You've heard from countless parents. The evidence speaks for itself. If you aren't willing to be part of the solution, you're part of the problem. because this community entrusted you with the oversight and power to respond. It's unpleasant, but a necessary part of checks and balances. Where is your integrity? Your silence is deafening. Now, one way to try to quash people's voices is through retaliation. Another way is to keep people in the dark. Since November of last year, I've told you about the administration's concerted efforts to block my access to class curriculum. The district instructed me to send FOIA requests, and then they denied them, claiming not to have records for a class that was going on for 6 months. In fact, the FOIA coordinator admitted to me on the phone that she would not be asking the teacher for any materials. If only this administration had been straightforward with me. I pleaded with the superintendent not to choose this path, and I gave the administration and this board every opportunity to avoid this. But the district dead-ended me with these games for months. So to my great relief, the Mackinac Center has agreed to help us seek accountability and justice. We launched a lawsuit, not just for my benefit, but on behalf of all parents who believe we have a legal right to know what children are taught in school. If the material you're using with kids and teachers is legal and ethical, sharing the content should be the easiest way to address concerns and foster trust with parents. Why keep it secret if there's nothing to hide? This unfair treatment toward parents is clearly a systemic problem. I should have been able to count on the board for oversight regarding these violations. I shouldn't have to file a lawsuit. I asked kindly and respectfully. I tried to forge a relationship with you, and then you forced me into the FOIA process and then ignored the law to keep me in the dark. You are not above the law, and you are not above our rights. In order for us to fully participate in the democratic process of free speech and commentary,
30 seconds.
it's essential that government bodies like public schools be transparent and non-retaliatory. We need new leadership at RCS who will embrace a healthy relationship with parents, even those who ask questions, and who will work together to truly put our kids first.
I don't think I need an introduction because I think you know who I am. I'm the one that sued you. I didn't come here to talk about my lawsuit. You already know the details of that. And nor did I want to get into a lawsuit with you in the first place. I wanted to expose what's been going on in this district for far too long. I love these schools. I've had some phenomenal teachers and administrators who I absolutely adore, who have made the biggest impact in my children's life. And it is sad to say that they are no longer in this district for fear of retaliation from my own family and my own children. It didn't have to come to this. It didn't have to come to a lawsuit. It didn't have to come to countless hours of legal fees, time, and stress. A good CEO addresses their staff, AKA the parents. But you continue to ignore the issues. That is not how a successful business is run. All we wanted as parents of RCS is for you to listen to us, to have a dialogue with us. All we wanted was transparency. All we wanted was an opportunity for you to sit down and understand what we were feeling. But you gave us none of that. You continue to work with your own agenda, your own desires. Your actions have caused fear and intimidation in the very people who elected you to office and put their school district in your hands. But that stops here. I'm so proud of this community for having their eyes wide open. Thank you for consistently not listening to us, because now you have exposed yourselves to the community, and parents are demanding change. Parents will no longer sit idle or quiet. We want your resignations now, because we can no longer trust our own administration, or board. Thank you.
Hi there. My name is Colleen Carney, and I currently have 2 children in the district. The following list is a compilation of unresolved matters I've heard from parents and community members across the district over several months and actually several years now. I know you've already heard these things before, but I will compile some of them here today because I couldn't choose just one topic to discuss as there are far too many. This community is tired. Tired of the lack of transparency, tired of the unanswered questions, tired of not being heard, tired of changing curriculum without community input, tired of frivolous spending, tired of unrepaired school buildings, tired of failed for-profit business ventures, tired of our students falling behind with no plan to catch them up, tired of growing class sizes, tired of the excuses, tired of the unpaid paras, tired of the 1% raises for teachers, tired of the 12% raises for the superintendent, who can't even be here tonight, tired of no accountability, tired of the lack of oversight, tired of the sexually explicit materials available in the schools, tired of the false narratives to create division, tired of the lying, tired of the cover-ups, tired of the lawsuits, tired of the cease and desist letters, and tired of the bullying. Ultimately, we're tired of the messes you continue to make. The depositions from the recent lawsuit told many truths. And if you haven't read them yet, I really suggest you do, because it's very eye-opening. You must step down so this community can repair the trust that you have broken. Shaner, Fragamenti, Bull, and the rest of you. Since you knew or were directly involved and did nothing about it, or did not set the record straight, we cannot trust you that you can repair the problems which you have created. After years of giving you the benefit of the doubt, it is obvious now you have no interest in working with the community in which you serve. Your tactics and your distractions will not deter our efforts. We may be tired, but we will not give up. Thanks.
Good evening. How are you? My name is Doug Nickel. I'm a 25-year resident out here. I fell in love with the community the weekend they dedicated the Veterans Point at Avon and Livernois. I don't know if any of you were here back then. I was one of the flight crew for the helicopter that landed there when I was in the Army. And I loved the community. I started out in Birmingham, and then I moved out here, 95, I believe. I love it. But I want to address some of the building maintenance. You had the bids described earlier. Thank you. I'm wondering if you can add to the meeting agenda, either monthly, bi-monthly. You've got, the repairs at like Long Meadow is a classic example. It's been ongoing for, year and a half, 2 years? There's a bidding process, I understand that. I've done government bids in the defense business. I've done state bids. It doesn't take that long. I bid on an armored vehicle. It was 10 months, and that was a $50 million program. I don't see what's taking so long for $10,000 or $12,000. If you could, I would appreciate 3 simple things I look at. Who's doing what and when? When these repairs are noted and have to be done, who's following the bid? What's being done about it? And when will it be due and completed? It's not that simple. It's pretty easy. It keeps people accountable for what's going on, and the can doesn't get kicked down the road. There were some terms I heard earlier tonight. Stakeholders. You're a board. These are your stakeholders out here. They control everything money-wise that comes into the board, which includes the buildings. I've had some friends on boards. When they're not doing their job, they're not a board member anymore. I know I segued, I'm sorry. But the other one is, the open dialogue. Along with these maintenance bids and these repairs going on that have been dragged on, I have never seen any dialogue or any response to these building repairs. Long Meadow, that the roof's leaking, I believe it's a flashing issue. They repaired the roof. You spent $1 to fix a dime. Why? Why wasn't it investigated before the roof repairs were done? It's a waste of money. The other one is the common one tonight's transparency. Work on that. Because, I've come to a number of these meetings. I don't see it. I don't see it in the minutes. And there's too much holding back. And as somebody said, you've lost the integrity of the community. And, I stand quiet through a lot of these meetings. And these past few weeks, I really see what they're saying. There is no integrity. I can't see it. And hopefully, even the small step, I turn companies around. I turn management around. How much long?
30 seconds.
Thank you, sir. I turn companies around, engineering departments around, and build the trust with the customer. I would, if I was hired to do this, I wouldn't know where to start. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kind of wish I was talking about the admin building now, but I'm not. So, my name is Nicholas Martin. I've lived here since 2009. I have 2 daughters in the district. I had a speech written, but I'm going for a shorter version. I don't like being up here. I never thought I would have to be up here advocating for my children or children of this community, but because you all repeatedly fail to listen to all parents and only care for people with like-minded views and bully and intimidate those with different opinions from your own, here I am, as you sit there smug, as usual. Are you guys having fun? Right. Okay. I guarantee if you were properly doing your jobs, all of us would not be here. Because that is what we expect and trust. You get hired to do a job and do it to the best of your ability according to the compensation you are paid or the oath you took for your position. I am only here to prove to this administration and BOE that we are not going to back down from you. We are not going to stop advocating for our children. You all have failed the community. I would like to welcome all community members, all walks of life, and all political views to join together in removing this administration and school board for the spying on community members, calling employers, calling the police, calling the FBI, being involved in despicable lawsuits that negatively impact our community and district. Even if we can't all agree on every topic all the time, I know we all want what's best for our children. If you are doing this to parents, I can't imagine what teachers and staff are going through that oppose the views of this admin. We value and have the utmost respect for teachers and staff in this community. But you all broke this community's trust, and the only way to fix it is to step down and let us pick new leadership and bring excellence back to the broken administration and BOE. True leaders would listen to all voices, not just those they agree with. True leaders are not hypocrites. True leaders welcome all ideas from all citizens. True leaders do not try to silence and censor what they don't understand or do not like. The BOE is supposed to check the superintendent, not give them free rein. The BOE answers to us, the community. For all of these reasons, we respectfully demand that you all fire Robert Shaner and any administration employees involved in tarnishing this community's great reputation and respect this community and school district's wishes
30 seconds.
And step down. All of you. The entire BOE. We would also like to demand a third-party investigation on this administration from the time Robert Shaner was hired in 2013. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Amy Ackerman. I have 2 children in the district. I'm going to start with a lawsuit that was brought against this district. Where was the notifications to the families in the district about the lawsuit and its progress? We receive emails almost in real time when a teacher says a questionable word in the classroom, but not a single email about the district being sued. No email letting our school community know the tax dollars that should be spent to educate our children are being spent on attorneys and settlements. Let's talk about why the district was sued. As professional leaders of our school, when confronted with a parent who said something on social media that you didn't like, your response wasn't to reach out to the parent and have a discussion. It was to call her employer and get her fired. That's not ethical, professional, or in any way leadership. That is sinister, unprofessional, and not what any of this community should accept from their Board of Education and superintendent. Now let's talk about the reasoning given by the district to perform this betrayal of trust. Ms. DeVerno asked parents to videotape their children in distress caused by online classes. Surprisingly, getting Ms. DeVerno fired did not reduce my child's distress. If you're so worried about kids in distress, the solution certainly was not getting a parent fired. These are the types of solutions to problems we do not need, but seem to be the only way this Board of Education and superintendent respond. And finding that Ms. DeVerno wasn't the only parent targeted was shocking. Let me read a section from a deposition from Superintendent Shaner about another parent so you can hear his words. The question from the attorney said, "Why did you do that?" His answer, "Because I was concerned and scared." Question, "About what?" "About the nature of the Facebook post." Question, "What was it about it?" "I didn't get anything other than he was recommending a protest." Answer, "In front of people's homes. He was talking about putting pressure on people in their personal lives." The end of the story is the superintendent contacted this parent's employer, too. This parent is a police officer. The superintendent of our school was upset because someone posted about protesting, and the superintendent was concerned because, I quote, "He was talking about putting pressure on people in their personal lives." And yet his response was to do exactly that. He put 100% pressure on this police officer's personal life by contacting his employer, along with Ms. DeVerno's and other parents. To what end? How did this solve any problems? It was merely a bullying tactic. This is not the type of leadership that should be guiding our school district throughout such difficult times. We have an amazing community, unbelievable teachers, and great families to support our schools. But our Board of Education and superintendent want nothing to do with that. They want to have closed-door meetings, bully people that disagree with their decisions, weaken our district through making people afraid to question what we see happening. Final thoughts. I find it interesting that I keep hearing that we have a difficult time hiring teachers in our district, because I think we have a pretty great community. But if parents are being treated like this, I can only imagine if a teacher dares to disagree with this Board of Education and superintendent.
30 seconds.
We need ethical, professional leaders for the district. We clearly don't have that. Instead, we have paid staff members spying on parents. We have Board of Education and superintendents being sued and not even bothering to read the complaint. But what I think is really the most telling is that this Board of Education and superintendent don't think they did anything wrong. They think they are justified to waste resources on monitoring social media, and using it to attack parents. They have not made any statements to apologize to the district for wasting money and resources. I'm asking that the board to fire the superintendent and then all resign, because you do not represent the integrity of this community and completely lack leadership skills that we need in this district.
Good evening. I'm Courtney Dimitri, a district taxpayer and a parent to 2 RCS students. I'm not a parent you have previously heard from. I have been reluctant to speak. As an advocate of mental health, I recognize it is an extremely personal and private journey. I now find myself in a position where I have to publicly expose details about my children's health to highlight how deeply you have failed our kids. My once carefree, happy children are now ridden with anxiety and depression. Your choices have left scars on my family and many across this community. We chose to live in this community because of the district. The teachers, counselors, administrators at our school are among the best. I'm beyond grateful for them all, and I applaud their service. I worked closely with these faculty members at multiple schools. When I presented them with our challenges, I was told by various staff at various levels, if I wanted to do right by my kids and I had the means, I should leave. I'm going to say that again. I was advised to leave the district to make progress. While shocked by the blunt honesty, I was humbled by their willingness to protect my students when you did not. Proud, they chose ethical and professional integrity over a district sales pitch. So we left. It was an amazing experience, and they began to thrive. For multiple reasons, it was not a sustainable solution. We decided to return to RCS. We were optimistic that changes were on the horizon with the pandemic progressing. It was all a lie. At a time we should have leaned in, listened harder, worked together toward realistic solutions, like districts all around us, you strong-armed us into positions we do not belong. I worry every day about the lasting damage of this impact on our kids emotionally and academically. How can a BOE who claims to represent our diverse community vote 100% with the superintendent 100% of the time? You were supposed to be our voice, not cover it up to cater to a political puppet. In the time you have failed my family with weak COVID protocols, I've begun watching more closely, waking up like countless other parents to lawsuits, budget mismanagement, canceled curriculum, distribution of pornographic material, lack of transparency, just to name a few. How do you sleep at night? I don't, in anticipation of the next panic attack. You do not speak for me. You do not represent my children. This is not the district we came for, and I call for your resignations. Thank you.
I was hoping I had a little more time. So I'm a father of 3 boys in the district, and so I have a question and some comments. So my main question is, why haven't we heard from the board with everything that's gone on in the last couple of months? So we heard from Joe Patel, but I would expect that we would hear from the president and vice president. In your corporate roles, you would do that, right? So why should we expect anything less? So just to be clear, I'm not asking you to comment on the lawsuit, but what is our path forward? So as I see it, you have 4 choices, probably more. Stay the course. You guys are happy with how things are going. Implement Joe's changes. You could do that. Maybe you have your recommendations of your own that you like to implement. And there's probably some type of hybrid approach, right? But we haven't heard from you. Your bosses in your corporate, if this happened in the corporate world, your bosses would expect something of you, a plan forward. What are your recommendations? How are you going to resolve this? So why am I asking this? Because I've noticed, and I think a lot of parents, that there's escalating intimidation and bullying behavior in this district by the leadership. So some examples, some of it have already been brought up, but the ACLU got involved, right? And that's never a good thing, because they said, parents' freedom of speech was impacted. And so what did they say? They wanted to implement procedures to prevent this in the future. Obviously, that wasn't done. And then we had an issue in the community where someone sent a letter using somebody else's name. Police were called, cease and desist letters were sent. That parent came up here and pleaded with you guys to implement a transparent protocol and add more checks and balances. Was anything done? No. And you could have prevented a lot of this if you just took action. Listen to parents. I think we all know about the latest lawsuits, but calling a parent's employer is a line that should never be crossed, period. I mean, there's no excuse. I mean, some more examples. Rochester City Council said they felt bullied by RCS lawyers. You have Dr. Shaner berating a mom, a parent, at a town hall. I mean, that's not acceptable at any level. So we ask kids to stand up to bullies, but what are you doing? You know what I'm talking about. And then mainly, lastly, the depositions.
30 seconds.
They were horrible. No integrity. It's like a student being sent to the principal's office and saying, I don't know, I didn't see anything, it wasn't me. I mean, we expect our kids to act with some integrity, and I didn't see that in the depositions, and I'm not dumb. Nobody here is dumb. We know that you were coached. But from a public position, would expect a little more integrity.
10 seconds.
So basically, there's this pattern of escalating behavior that's well below the standards that we expect for this administration. So please do something this time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's David Nagel. My wife and I moved to Rochester Hills in 2011, 2 months after our first child was born. It was primarily the schools that brought us here. We had every intention of raising our children here. As it is, it'll be the school district that drives us out of this community. I'm afraid to stand up here versely. I'm afraid of public speaking. This is well beyond anything I've ever done. Second, I'm genuinely afraid of losing my job or being retaliated against in other ways, as others have proven to be. How sad is that in the year 2022, in a supposed free land, that a parent should be afraid to speak out against wrongs and injustices. I am embarrassed and ashamed to be represented by this board and the leadership of the superintendent's office. The controversies grow day by day. The severity of some of these actions by some and inactions by others, it's loathsome. Every email that comes from Dr. Shaner or Ms. Fragamenti, I pray it is to announce the resignations or the resignations of the board. Instead, it is a slap in the face when the emails instead talk of values and respect. Total hypocrisy. I cringe when I read them. I beg for all those involved in all these wrongdoings, please do the right thing and resign. This community, it must move on. It must be led by new leaders, new representation. I'm not a very outspoken person. I've never been involved in any sort of public action, anything resembling this. You know you've done something wrong when you get somebody like me up here to speak out. I'm confident there are thousands of parents and citizens just like me who are still silent. I pray that they also make their voices heard.
Hello. Tough crowd, eh? Yeah. You know it's pretty bad when you can't get one citizen to publicly pat you guys on the back. So my name is Tim Peterson. I got 3 kids at Longmeadow. If Bob was here, he would recognize me from the 10 or 12 emails that I sent him, and he simply ignored them. I'd like to know in what reality someone can get a compensation package estimated to be $700,000 a year and pick and choose what citizens he gets to call back. I'm also one of the parents that received the anonymous letter that was an attempt at intimidation. It didn't work, and neither did the last-minute cancellations and format changes for this meeting. I'm proud to speak up with the other brave moms and dads and taxpayers in this room. So almost 6 years ago, my wife and I moved here from Sterling Heights and made the decision to move here for the schools. Sadly, I'm starting to regret that decision. I don't know if it's a toxic and biased Longmeadow PTA that I tried to expose since 2020, the black mold at Longmeadow where my kids attend and breathe the air every day, the graphic porn in our libraries, the wasteful and secretive spending on this new administration building, or just in general how you guys rolled out this online learning plan that catered to only a fraction of the community. You disrespectfully ignored and worse yet went after the livelihoods of parents who didn't agree with you. That's absurd. I was recently at a PTA meeting a couple weeks ago and there was a $2,000 request for a building improvement to put corkboard furring strips in the hallway so 5th graders can hang their artwork. It was shelved for further discussion. It was, why should parents have to pay for this stuff? So, with all the foolish spending, I figured out why should the parents pay for this stuff. So tonight, when the executive staff and whoever is making a 6-figure salary in this district goes home and tries to figure out what kind of couch you want to put in your new executive office, or what kind of carpet you want, or what kind of art you want on your walls, why don't you guys get your priorities straight and put the money with the teachers and the kids? Thank you.
So, good evening.
My name is Namran, and I have 2 boys in the district. And I'm afraid that it might appear that I'm not all that prepared because I'm choosing to go off script from what I had originally prepared for this evening. The truth is, I've spent many hours preparing and agonizing over what I'd say. What words could I possibly say that would penetrate the wall that exists between the board and the community? Tonight, I'm going off script because I never figured it out. Many of the thoughts that I was going to share have already been echoed here tonight, and they've fallen on ears that are not open. So my words here tonight are less for the board and more for those who are tuning in from home. First, I understand why you're at home. I didn't want to be here tonight, and I definitely didn't want to be standing up here speaking. Tonight, I'm using my time to encourage other parents to get involved, to step out from the shadows. Parents, we may not see eye to eye on all the issues, whether masks should be required or not, whether buildings should be preserved or not, how tax dollars should be used, and so many others. But that's okay, it really is. These topics have become so divisive, so polarizing, that we are losing sight of where the true problem lies. That is the superintendent and the school board that is representing us all. This should be a unifying topic for all parents. Parents, even if you agree with the board's stance on a given issue, you cannot support their behavior. This behavior is not rumor or speculation. It is public reading material in the form of depositions with more to come. I will not call out the board members by name. There really is no need. The truth is, you either directly participated in the activities that have put our district in the headlines, or you sat silently by while it happened. Your silence speaks volumes. Parents, we may disagree on issues, and that's okay. But please get involved. This is the great unifier. We all deserve better representation, and this superintendent and this board is not it.
Good evening. My name is Elizabeth Clare, and I'm a parent of a child in the district. This is my first time speaking at a board meeting, and admittedly and regretfully, this is probably something I should have done a long time ago. But to be completely honest, I was scared. I knew all too well the tactics the administration and BOE were employing to try to silence, intimidate, and retaliate against individuals that spoke up in these forums. Unfortunately, the strategies worked to silence me for far too long. I've written letters that never got sent and speeches that never got delivered, because after I thought about it long and hard, I concluded that my livelihood and ability to provide for my family were not just something I could put at risk, even though I desperately wanted to speak up about my dissatisfaction with what I saw happening in the district. Sadly, I know I am not alone in feeling this way. There are many others that feared speaking up about their concerns regarding their children's education and the problematic behavior of the district. It simply shouldn't be this way. Parents and citizens alike should not fear the school district that their taxes fund. Your actions have caused a complete breakdown in trust, and unfortunately the damage is now irreparable. You've brought shame and embarrassment to our community, not just locally, but on an international stage. What you did is not okay, and there should be no putting this behind us or moving on from this misconduct. The people who engaged or had knowledge of these transgressions need to be held accountable. So to this end, I am first requesting you to terminate the employment of Debbie Fragamini, Amy DeCreasy, and Lori Green for their involvement in retaliating against parents and for their obvious misuse of taxpayer funds. Second, I ask the board to terminate the employment of Dr. Shaner for breach of contract on the grounds of moral turpitude. Referencing Section 13 of Dr. Shaner's employment contract, it states, "The district's Board of Education may terminate this agreement during its term without further liability to the superintendent for compensation, fringe benefits, or otherwise for any reasons that are not arbitrary and capricious, including but not limited to nonfeasance, misfeasance, malfeasance, moral turpitude, and financial impropriety. Moral turpitude is described as a deviant behavior constituting an immoral, unethical, or unjust departure from ordinary social standards, such that it would shock a community. Dr. Shaner's actions have most certainly shocked our community. And for this, I am requesting he be terminated. And lastly, I would request the entire Board of Education to resign from their positions for failure to uphold both the board bylaws and the Michigan Code of Ethical Relationships for Board of Education members and educational administrators. Principle 1 is the code of the code is a commitment to be trustworthy, and Principle 2 is a commitment to be responsible. By engaging in retaliatory tactics, failing to disclose the administration's illegal actions, and neglecting to hold those individuals responsible, you are neither trustworthy or responsible. Please do the right thing and allow our community to heal and begin the process of rebuilding trust in our school system. Thank you for your time tonight.
Good evening. My name is Jessica Weiner. I started the Facebook group, The Conservative Parents of Rochester, now the Conservative Parents of Michigan. I started the group because I wanted parents in the community that were being canceled to have a safe place to talk and a community with like-minded people. Unfortunately, we were even stripped of a simple freedom when our board decided to stalk Rochester Community School parents on my page and attack them personally at their place of work, and even as far as to get the police involved. I am disgusted, but not surprised. We moved to Rochester for the schools and the family community. My husband served in the military for 14 years. We started our family, and the military life was challenging, as you can imagine. I grew up in Michigan, so when my husband got out, there was no other place I wanted to raise my kids than in Rochester, Michigan, with good Midwest values. Mind you, we have lived in Hawaii, Guam, Florida, and California, and we chose Rochester. My husband and I were unhappy with the woke tone of the superintendent's emails and curriculum before the pandemic. The pandemic only shined a bigger light on your flaws. So much so we removed our kids from the Rochester Community Schools. We put them in a hybrid homeschool program. I never wanted to be a homeschool mom, but you left me with little choice. Next year, we are going to pay to put them in private school, even though we pay hefty Rochester taxes for the schools. How many other families have left? That alone should alarm you. I do not want Rochester Community Schools to be conservative. I want them to be neutral. It is quite clear that you put your politics before our children. It is simple. Educate our kids how to think, not what to think. We are a very involved group of parents that can parent our own children. So educate our children and let us handle ideology. We do not co-parent with you. You have proven time and time again that you are not capable of this. In fact, you have massively failed the community, parents, and most importantly, the kids. Dr. Shaner, don't know where he is, I was going to address him, was a Marine. Would his behavior put his rank in jeopardy if he was this way while in a leadership role, while in active duty? In the military, accountability and integrity is everything. Do the right thing, hold yourself accountable, and resign.
Good evening. My name is David Bacchus, and I am a parent of 2 kids in Rochester. And I'm a little bit different than everybody else here. I'm not here. I'm not from Rochester for 30 years. My wife and I came from Ohio, and we chose this area because of Rochester schools. And my topic today was, why should I keep my kids in your schools, or should I pull them out? I see that there's an unequal distribution of resources seemingly against high-performing individuals. Even though we've seen some data today, I see otherwise. Why is there cancellation of honors classes for junior high? Why am I seeing elements in elementary school of holding gifted kids' backs? Why aren't there programs like we had when we were kids, that there was groups A and B and C and you were challenged and instead of not being challenged? What I'd like to hear from the board is, we're not going to get rid of honors programs in junior highs. We're not going to get rid of honors and AP classes in high schools, and I would like you all to guarantee that, at least for my kids, for the next decade. Inappropriate books. I've heard it 5 times tonight, so I'm not going to dwell on it. I don't care how you justify it. It's inappropriate and unacceptable on any standard. They should be pulled from the libraries and quit the semantics and say that it's in teachers' personal libraries in their classrooms. Politics and ideology seem to be making decisions to allocate funds instead of what's right for our kids. Why does DEI and CRT be the only focus of what I read in every announcement? When teachers have continuing education credits every year, why don't I hear the most important thing of the anxiety of the kids of this once-in-a-100-year crisis? Why aren't we training our educators and administrators and our teachers more on how to help our kids? The parents have a God-given right to raise our kids as we see fit, and I did not concede that right to any of you. Our kids are our most precious commodity, and we're dealing with behavior that we've never seen before. Kids have anxiety. I see it. All the neighborhood kids, my kids, it's not the normal. Why isn't there a full-time social worker in every Rochester school? Why isn't this not a priority? We have 29 total social workers, 21 are full-time, 8 are part-time. I'm sorry I didn't bring my laptop to edit this because one just retired. Over 15,000 kids, that comes out to 714 kids per social worker. That's overwhelming everybody. Lastly, Dr. Shaner's interests don't seem to be aligned with the community he serves or the parents that are raising our kids. His agenda seems to be outside the community. He hasn't learned anything from lawsuits starting over 2 years ago for monitoring parents. Today, let me be clear. He uses the tools of Rochester Hills tax dollars, spreads misinformation, and monitors parents. This is not okay at any time with any tax dollars, and is disturbing. I ask immediately for Dr. Shaner to submit his letter of resignation, or you do your duty and terminate him and all other administration that were complicit in this. And if there's any board members that were complicit in this, that you resign after you do this. He simply no longer has the street credibility to lead the school or our children. And the number one reason I see that it's valid to ask for the resignation is the people here today. They all have the same message. That should mean something. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Board of Education and Administration. I look around this room and I see a heck of a lot of dedication. I see parents who are dedicated to the education of their kids. I see people who are dedicated to the history of our community. I see so many dedicated principals and teachers and administrators. And in every single one of you, I have seen dedication at times. Thank you for your dedication. Thank you. I'm going to start off with this. Parents are not pests. We're not problems. We're not protesters. We are partners. These are our kids. And by law, we are partners. Now, could you imagine if our district monitored Facebook groups in order to use the feedback on there to meet the needs of students and to improve or change where needed? if they proactively made changes before parents even went to the Board of Education to ask for them because they saw it was a hot topic in these groups. If they forwarded advocacy and ideas to the principals instead of protesters. If they saw a need for information and provided it without requiring a FOIA costing hundreds of dollars. If they called our employees or our employers and said, "This person wants school improvement, what a great employee you have." Maybe that wouldn't be such a great idea. We would have an astonishingly awesome district. Instead, wow, what a mess, what a disaster, what a complete waste of administrative resources, what complete destruction of the natural goodwill of families. I believe we can have one astonishingly awesome district. I believe we can regain the goodwill of families. I believe we can keep the amazing administrators and replace the disastrous ones. I believe our excellent teachers, strong principals, and great staff can work with parents to fix our community and our district and bring back pride. And I believe this fall, we will have parents running for Board of Education positions who believe that too, and will work for this success. I am proud to stand with parents who are looking to make our district the best it can be. Thank you.
Thank you.
How you doing? I'm Dave. I am a third generation Rochester kid. My grandfather came here when he was 10 and caddied at Rochester Country Club, and I played there through my 20s because he loved it so much. And I went to Brooklands and Ruther and Rochester High, graduated in '84, and then my daughter went to Brooklands in '94, Ruther, and then she was in the first class that went to IA, and that was a great thing. And then my son, Ruther, and Rochester High also. And then when my son, when they went off to college, off to Michigan State, go Green, we started doing foster care, and we've had dozens of kids, but we've had 11 in the last 10 years that have been in the Rochester schools. 5 at Brooklands, 3 at Hampton, and 3 at Ruther. And I love the Rochester schools. I do a lot of advocacy, a lot of training, a lot of recruitment. I don't go anywhere without asking people, if you ever thought about doing foster care, come and talk to me, because there's about 4,000 not enough homes in the state of Michigan. But at least a third of the time when I don't have an answer for someone when they ask me a problem about foster care, it's because they're having a hard time getting the school system they're in to help them. I don't know what to say because my kids are in Rochester school. You know, I have to come down here in the middle of a school year with a kid who's probably hasn't done any schooling at all and get him into school. I have to come right down here at the end of the hallway and go to and I tell you what, I've never been anything but treated like a king. You know, every time we take a kid into the school, the principal from Brooklands was here earlier, and they see us coming, and they come out 100 yards from the school in the middle of the parking lot to welcome the kid to the school. They treat them like gold, and they get them the help they need. Other parents that are in other districts, they can't get their kid an IEP, they can't get their kid reading help, they can't get their kid a social worker. I never have any problems like that in Rochester schools. Some of you were at Brooklands today, and my beautiful son Jaden, who we got when he was 3 weeks old, was one of the kids helping you walk around, and he mentioned it when he got home. He's the biggest second grader in the world. He has size 7 men's shoes, so I'm probably going to be 10 feet tall. I don't know. But I can't say enough about Rochester schools, but twice in the last 2 weeks, I've heard Rochester Schools mentioned on WJR, because I'm a big listener in the afternoon, around the 4 o'clock hour while I'm sitting in the parking lot waiting to pick these boys up from school. And twice in the last 2 weeks, I got to hear stories about Rochester Community Schools. Are you kidding me? It's not good. And we've gone this far into the evening without anybody making a threat, and I hate to be the one who does it, but if you don't clean up your act, next time at this meeting, it's going to be my wife up here, not me, and then you're going to be in trouble. Because I'm not a crusader, but she's got 3 crusades going right now, 1 at the state level and 2 at the county, and it's about keeping these kids safe. You don't want her up here. Sorry I had to go there and threaten you like that. Have a nice day.
Thank you.
Doesn't seem like a meeting without me talking twice, does it? So, parents, many of you may not like my presentation style, but I have a quick question. Where's Shaner? Shouldn't he be here too, listening to us, instead of all of you all having to take all of what's rolling downhill for him? I don't understand why there's this loyalty to him, because he certainly hasn't been loyal to you. Seems like he can dish it, but he can't take it. And there's many people here who are the show of force members, but not him. So why are you so loyal to him? I think letters from the ACLU mean that you're doing something wrong. Scott, welcome to the board meeting, because I'm pretty sure you weren't looking for that one, were you? I know, since October, right? So, I have an idea of things that you people can do to improve your relationship with us, the stakeholders, okay? I'm going to go with this here. I got 5 of them, okay? Number 1, cancel the RFP. Number 2, deed the land and the property and the building over to the city so that they can take care of it and you don't have it on your books anymore and you don't have to deal with it anymore. So give it to the city, give it to the people, because let's just say that we already paid for this building and it really doesn't belong to you. And then number 3, terminate Shaner for cause. There was a nice lady who had everything encompassed up here for why you should terminate him for his contract. No golden parachute. And then number 4, fire Fragamenti, fire Grind, and fire DeCreasy. Because how dare they actually sit there and obey an unlawful order given to them by someone who was violating everything that we uphold. And then number 5, y'all can resign, and I hate to say this because I am not a big government person. Resign, and then the state can come in and help us get people who we can trust. So those are the 5 steps you guys can take to get your shit in order.
Thank you.
Hello, I am Jane Evans. I have 2 children. One is a sophomore in college right now. She was a graduate of 2020, that fun year. And my son is a senior at Rochester High. I'm embarrassed to say I have never been to a Board of Education meeting before, but there are many people in this room who know who I am. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about my journey because I think it's really important to kind of it's really a little bit different story, but it tops it off with everything else going on right now with Dr. Shaner and the board and everyone who represents Rochester schools. A special education department as well, and more importantly. So I have feared a little bit from this environment that I would be retaliated. I'm a single mom, I'm a realtor in this community, and that's my job, okay? I have 2 kids going to college, and it's been a fight for me for 13 years with Rochester Schools to get my son what he needs. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about my story. Sorry, I'm a little bit nervous, but some of you people don't even probably realize what goes on. You saw these great presentations today from the staff of what's going on in Rochester Schools. But I'm going to tell you a little bit about reality if you have a kid with special needs. It started in preschool that my son was identified with emotional impairment, and he got his first IEP. Then 3 years later, he was diagnosed with Asperger's. Everyone at Hamlin Elementary knows who he is. Everyone at West Middle School knows who he is. And everyone at Rochester High knows who he is. But you talk about inclusive? No way. No inclusivity at all. And you talk about the money I've had to spend to get my son the services he deserved. It's been thousands and thousands of dollars. In 3rd grade, I learned about this IEP was not being followed. So I hired my advocate. I've had an advocate since 3rd grade. And I've used her year after year. And you don't understand how much it costs to have an advocate. But this is unacceptable. Unacceptable. We moved here also for Rochester schools, thinking they were great, right? We didn't know. My son wasn't born yet. Now my daughter, it's a whole different story, right? She's a different child. But my son deserved the services that we were promised. But year after year, I had to fight with the schools and fight with the special education department, send emails with no responses. Fight, and then get the meetings together that we put together and put these other IPs and had the advocate help us get what the services he deserved.
30 seconds.
Okay, middle school, I'm going to hurry up. Middle school was a complete disaster. Rochester, when we get there, was actually pretty good. And I want to just say this. We have had some wonderful, wonderful teachers and paraprofessionals by his side, and that has just been amazing, okay? But the staff, the administrative staff, for the most part, we've had a couple that have helped us tremendously. But then we get to Rochester High, and then COVID hit, and it took me five times asking for someone to reach out to Colin. Now, he has an IEP, right? He has an IEP. Then I finally filed a state complaint and a civil complaint. And that was my second complaint with Rochester Schools.
10 seconds.
That costs a lot more money. Finally got what I needed. But guess what? 34 days, I have 34 days left. But I am a Rochester community member. I'm a realtor that's selling houses in this community, and I want to sell Rochester Schools. So I am asking for the resignation also of Dr. Shaner. Number one, because he has never returned my calls either, and he knows who I am. And everything I've heard about the Board of Education going on, I've finally decided to come and speak up. So the good news is my son is graduating, he's going to college, and there's been a lot of other support that has helped, but not without thousands of dollars that I've had to spend. The special education department needs to change, and the top needs to change. That's where it all starts. No one ever calls me back.
Thank you. This is...
I'm Joanne Puffercotcher. Some of you know me as the Donut Dolly. I served with the Red Cross in Vietnam for 12 months during the war. We were the first women allowed in a combat zone. I was almost killed 6 times. I saw the price of freedom. In another life, I was a high school math teacher, and I have 2 children who went through the Rochester Community Schools. This is the first time the situation has been so bad. I felt I needed to come to a school board meeting. By law, our schools are subject to local control. School officials must listen to the parents. We have seen some recent examples of some officials who got that wrong. Need I mention Virginia? John Rocha is a candidate for state representative in the Michigan 78th District. That is the southwestmost district in Michigan, bordered by Lake Michigan and Ohio. Rocha is a Marine veteran. He has announced a major piece of legislation to protect our young students from sexual indoctrination in Michigan schools. Rocha said on Monday, elementary kids should learn about math, science, history, and how to read and write. Radical sexual indoctrination from adults pushing personal agendas has no place whatsoever in the education of Michigan's youngest students. I forgot to show you my coat. Thank you. Rocha's legislation mirrors a recent bill in Florida. He said, as state representative, I will introduce legislation modeled after the law recently signed by Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, banning discussion or dissemination of materials that involve sexual orientation, gender identity, or any sexually explicit content in kindergarten through 4th grade. If these ideas don't belong in the schools, they don't belong in the library either.
"30 seconds.
We all know it's a good idea to listen to Grandma, even though she's voting way down in Florida. Rocha said, radical leftists will call me a bigot and a homophobe, which wouldn't be further from the truth. I just want to give all our kids a chance to be kids.
10 seconds.
As a parent, this fight is important to me. I agree with Rocha.
Thank you.
Hello. First and foremost, I'm just so proud to be a part of this community and all these people who got up to speak and, against, where people are scared and they're scared because of your actions. They're scared of retaliation. And honestly, I was scared too. I wasn't sure I was going to come up here. I told my mom I was coming here and she said, "Oh, Carrie, don't do it. You don't need trouble. There's some bad people associated with this group." That is sad. That is really sad. My mom said, "Carrie, don't do it. You don't need trouble." What kind of retaliation are you going to face if you get up there? You know why I'm here? I'm here because I care about our kids. I'm a taxpayer. And there's all these other people that spoke up, and I feel like I need to use my voice too. I'm not going to be bullied. I'm not going to be silenced by anybody. And, my kids aren't in the Rochester schools anymore. I pulled them out several years ago. And Jane, your story really touched me. I have a child with special needs, and in your schools, the pain that we endured in the Rochester schools was so bad. We had we got tricked into signing something that wasn't an IEP. It was the level below, and I'm blanking on what it was. 504, it hadn't even been in place for 2 weeks when it was violated. And I'll never forget it. The learning consultant responded to my email and said, we purposely wrote it vague so that anybody could provide those supports, including his own teacher. Teacher had over 30 students. Those supports were not provided. We left. I have 3 kids. I paid $30,000 to send my child to Eaton Academy because you wouldn't provide any support to a family that was suffering. That is shameful. I moved here from Chicago. I grew up in the Rochester schools. When I convinced my husband, a Chicago native, to move to Michigan, I convinced him to move to Rochester. He wanted Birmingham, honestly. And we chose Rochester because of the Rochester schools. And then we were so disappointed beyond measure. The year that we left the Rochester Community Schools was one of the most difficult years of my life because it was so sad to feel that you guys didn't care about my children and that you were more worried about whatever it was going to cost to provide those services than to just actually help a child who needed it. And so then to hear of the actions that are occurring today, the way the money is being spent, and how in the world did Shaner qualify for this huge raise? I mean, I'm a recruiter for a living. I place people in jobs. I understand how performance is measured and how people get raises. This man got the biggest raise, and our teachers got very little. No additional funds to the special needs programs. You know, we've got dilapidated buildings. I just don't understand how these decisions are being made, and I'm really upset that you are silencing our community and our voices and what we need for our children.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Dennis Toluto, 31-year resident in Rochester Hills. Thank God my kids are grown and gone. I could not imagine dealing with some of the things that the parents are dealing with today. The reason for my appearance is there are plenty of friends and family that have kids in this school system that are near and dear to me. And some of the things that I've read in the public press and in social media just didn't sit right. So I'm compelled to say something, and you're not going to like this at all. The background that I'm bringing forward as a multi-term board member, I've served on boards. I've been a chairman of a board. I had corporate counsel that was rated in the top 10 in the country. So I've been schooled pretty hard in the responsibilities, legally, fiduciary, otherwise. And this is just an abject failure. This is a complete failure of governance and leadership. And I've spent, it's amazing when you start going through the mission. I went through your website, I looked at your policies, I looked at your handbook, and what's really interesting is you've got an open job requisition that you're going to be interviewing people for, and right in your own statement, this is on your website, an individual who has been convicted of a felony involving dishonesty, deceit, fraud, or a breach of the public trust related to an elective office or position of government employment is disqualified from service on the board. And you're going to interview that person? Really? Really? You're disqualified by your own language. So I've been through you should read Michigan Code 380 on education. It's brilliant because you know what's interesting, every clause in 380, when it talks about certain phrases, certain functions or rights or whatever, it always ends with the consent of their parents and guardians.
30 seconds.
Everything. So let me get to the point where you are really not going to like this. You know, your directors and officers, there's a president, a vice president, a treasurer, and a secretary, and you have members. And I know one of you for a fact is a lawyer. You've got D&O and E&O insurance that protects you, indemnifies you. However, almost every D&O and E&O policy has exclusionary clauses for criminal acts, intentions, and fraudulent acts, including libel, slander, defamation of character, violating rights of privacy, wrongful eviction, false arrest. You guys have violated your own D&O and E&O, and I hope you get counsel because you're going to need it. When your insurance carrier rejects your D&O and E&O, you become personally liable. You don't have corporate liability. You become personally liable. Shaner, whatever that lawsuit cost you, he should reimburse the district for that.
Beyond time. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm retired law enforcement. I'm a Vietnam veteran. Proud of both. Very proud. At 19, in leadership, I learned being a platoon sergeant, having 16 lives that I was responsible for, and them being responsible for mine. There was no limit to acknowledging mistakes. People got hurt. People got killed. And the typical thing is to blame yourself. Okay? You folks you're not doing that. You're sitting in your seats with a little bit of a panic. I read body language really well. And you're trying to be poised. You haven't even offered this group I've been standing since 5:30. That's almost 74. I feel pretty good about that. But you haven't offered a break. Stand up and stretch. Go get a drink of water. Anything. Just common sense, common courtesy. Your leadership is under fire here because of the dignity that you've taken away from these people. This is your army. I went with the army that I was with. We didn't pick one another. You didn't pick these folks either. But they are the army that you depend on. They pay for your salaries, right? I wasn't going to get involved in this until I learned over the last couple of weeks of the retaliation against Elena DeVerno. And I'm here to tell you, with the armor of God and the peaceful truth, if you do that to anyone else in any kind of way, as long as you are board members here or any authority here, you will have people like me or me standing with that family. You won't get away with it again. You've abdicated your responsibilities. If you were paramedics, the only ones available in the north sector going by that PI accident, people ejected from their vehicle, the way you've conducted yourself apparently, and you're Americans. I'm sure you didn't intend to take your positions and get to this point, this moment in time. But you would drive by that accident and say, man, it's somebody else's job. We'll delegate that out to somebody else. Terrible. So you have an opportunity. I was reading something about Tocqueville. Tocqueville spent a couple, 3 years in America. He came from France just to spend time with Americans. Some of you know the story. But his conclusion was, the United States is a great place as long as you keep the goodness of the people. You've lost the goodness of the people. You've lost it. My advice to you would be, another one of his quotes, The most perilous moment for a bad government is one when it seeks to mend its ways. In your cases, that dog has already left. It's too late. You heard it tonight, 78 to 1. I was hoping that somebody would come up here and defend you. I wanted to. I know individually you look in the mirror just like I do and say, you are the judge. You are the final arbiter of what you do every day. Your actions as leaders is the bottom line. It's not words, it's all actions. And it's obvious that you have failed in that area. If you acknowledge it, you're going to be a better person for it. You're all young enough to find another position
10 seconds.
somewhere. Okay? Focus on that. You're all young enough to find another position. All right? Take care.
Thank you.
So I got asked by a reporter before we came in, and a few of us gathered outside. I got asked, well, how did I feel about stuff? And my response was, I'm optimistic. Sitting here at past midnight and knowing that the district, and as we heard from Kristen Bull in her testimony, that Shaner sets the agenda, intentionally moved the comments to the end, intentionally canceled the meeting prior to this and put the two presentations together to create it so that more than likely people wouldn't stay till well past midnight to have their voices heard. 4 people didn't show up. I think it was 46 on the agenda, 4 people had to leave. That's pretty impressive. That's why I'm optimistic. A number of people, all we've asked for is the ability to have conversation, to have dialogue. Someone can come up here and absolutely give their opinion that they don't think Shaner did anything wrong and the board hasn't done anything wrong. They're entitled to their opinion. They also can be wrong. So that's the point. But I'd gladly sit down and talk to that person to try and explain to them why they are wrong. As I sat down with Albert Rush to talk about DEI and why it is wrong. And yet, we can't have those conversations. That's the dialogue that is not being allowed to happen because we're creating the divisiveness. So again, as people continue to come up here and talk, we have to make sure we understand leadership is supposed to de-escalate situations. You're supposed to understand, you're seeing emotion. You've seen emotion for almost 2 years. You are messing with people's children. To not expect there to be emotion would be, again, it's just irresponsible. There's going to be emotion. So now, I hope as we continue to move forward, and if you choose not to do what's right, I would imagine to hopefully see even more people come at the next meeting, because this is not okay. And people are going to stand with those. So for the people that come up here and are afraid of their jobs being lost, the community is going to make sure that doesn't happen. Because we'll make sure we support those people that do the right thing, that want to have dialogue, that can have a disagreement. But for everyone that is still up here that does not acknowledge what they did was wrong, that is a level of narcissism that is just unbelievable. So again, and I really do, one question if we can answer, Scott, why did you show up? What is different today than, if we can get one answer, you haven't been here since October. What's different for today? I think a lot of people would really like to know that answer.
Thank you.
I just have 2 very narrow topics. Bob Yeager again from Oakland Township. I forgot to mention 2 of my grandchildren went to Baldwin, Hart Middle School, and Stony Creek High School. My mother was a secretary to the superintendent in my hometown of Strongsville, Ohio, for about 20 or 30 years. So that's how I learned about how schools work and superintendents. My brother had undiagnosed dyslexia, and so he ended up the best he could be was an auto mechanic. He took everything apart and put it back together. But eventually, when he identified the problem, he's now a NASA technician in Cleveland, works on the moon lander. So I noticed that there are 79 committees in the state legislature, House and Senate. I can't follow them all. I follow a few. The Senate Education Committee tomorrow is talking about 4 bills, Senate bills. I think they're 381, 82, 83, and 84. They all have to do with making schools take care of dyslexia, diagnose it, make sure teachers are trained in it, and even having a state committee to advise people on the issue of dyslexia. So I thought that was great. I just read it today for the first time. It seems like something the school board ought to support. I believe you can legally support legislation, say we think this is a good idea to pass these laws. I think you can do that. Our township does it on certain matters. The second narrow issue is FOIA requests. I've said I've entered about 100 FOIA requests here, Lake Orion Community Schools, a couple other places I can't recall. I entered one to Rochester school system in all that time. Back, I think it was the last day before you went on winter vacation. So I thought, well, I'm not going to get an answer in 10 days, and that's okay. You know, when they get back, we'll start the 10-day clock then. So 10 days went by, and I sent an email, said, well, you know, where's my response? And that was ignored for a while. So I said, well, then I went back and read the procedure, and it says being ignored is the same as being denied. Whoops, now I better go to the appeal stage. So I went to the appeal stage, which I was surprised that it was to go to a next level of the administration. In our township, you go to the Board of Trustees. And I researched all the surrounding school boards around Rochester, and about half of them, you take your appeal to the Board of Education, which makes sense. I mean, if your administration is failing, do you really want it to go to the next level of administration so they could admit that the lower level? I don't think it's going to work. So, if you look at Troy, I think it's Troy, Pontiac, and Auburn Hills. There's Troy at least. They have an extensive FOIA document, 25 pages long, and all three, whichever of these schools are, they all are exactly the same. So they must have got them from a legal service. I suspect there's services that provide documents. And so theirs, to me, looks like the gold standard. And I didn't get to check it, but I think it's the same thing we have in Oakland Township. Third narrow topic, if we could get this kind of turnout for issues in our township, we would have a great government. We get two people, and our hot topic issues are, they're always, if they're going to build something, anybody's going to build something, we don't want anything built in our township, no way, that gets people out. The second biggest issue is changing the menu at the Pink Creek Cider Mill. That was the biggest issue in Oakland Township in the past year, but torches and pitchforks came out full force. So tomorrow we're having a board meeting, and I'm going to make sure they get a summary from me of what's going on in the school system. We have 10% of the students in your school system, I believe, are from Oakland Township. And I don't know if there's anybody here from Oakland Township. I don't think there is. I don't recognize a single person who spoke.
In time.
Are there some? Okay, well, we'll make sure that they know about things. Thank you.
Thank you.